Well, it looks like the other shoe is trying to drop. Now, if y'all remember, one of the terrorists that was involved with George Floyd's murder had pretty much the request of his attorney wanting to overturn the charges or pretty much drop them. That's pretty much technically putting it against him in his involvement with George Floyd's murder. Well, look whose attorney wants to do the same thing. And I called it. I said, when one person does something, the others are going to try to follow suit. And Derek Chauvin was no different. Because according to this article coming from CNN, it says former terrorist, I put that in there, in George Floyd's killing asks judge to dismiss charges. Is anybody surprised? But really, do they really think those charges are going to drop and that people are just going to accept that? I would say go at your own risk. But let's get into it. Former Minneapolis terrorist Derek Chauvin has asked the judge to dismiss murder charges against him in the death of George Floyd. In court papers Friday, Chauvin's attorney says there is no probable cause to support charges of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. So basically, he's basically saying Derek Chauvin had nothing to do with this because, when they put out that thing, remember that video I did about treading lightly? It was called Tread Lightly. They better tread lightly. The one where they were putting out about how he had overdosed on these drugs and something like that, and basically trying to remove Derek Chauvin. When they came out with that, I knew this was going to follow. They are so predictable. I don't know how some of us get hoodwinked by it. It's so predictable. Floyd's killing sparked protests against systemic racism and police brutality around the world. Meanwhile, prosecutors said Friday that Floyd's killing was so cruel that they want stricter sentences than recommended by state guidelines if Chauvin and the three other terrorists involved are found guilty. Floyd died on May 25th after Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for almost 8 minutes. No, it was over 8 minutes. It was almost 9 minutes. Sorry about that. 3 other former terrorists are charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. Former terrorists are charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. All 4 terrorists were fired. Prosecutors filed a notice that they will be asking for an upward sentencing departure in the cases of Chauvin, J. Alexander King, Thomas Kernan Lane, and 2000. So they basically all want to just walk away from this. Attorney General Keith Ellison did not define what the request will be, but he told the judge he has reason to go beyond the sentencing guidelines grid used in Minnesota to factor in a convicted person's past criminal history. Mr. Floyd was treated with particularly cruelty, prosecutors wrote. Despite Mr. Floyd's pleas that he could not breathe and was going to die, as well as the pleas of eyewitnesses to get off Mr. Floyd and help him, defendant and his co-defendants continued to restrain Mr. Floyd. The state also argues that the case has aggravated circumstances because Floyd was particularly vulnerable in handcuffs and also claims that the officers abused their authority. The other 3 former terrorists earlier filed motions to dismiss. Judge Peter Cahill has not yet ruled on any of them. Chauvin also wants Hennepin County Attorney's Office disqualified in part because of what Chauvin's attorney called an inappropriate pretrial publicity campaign, according to the filing. Cahill has denied a similar request by another former officer. CNN reached out to the officers' attorneys for comment but has not yet heard back. Like I said, I knew they were going to pull this stunt. Who did not see that coming? They want them to walk away from this so bad as if the world did not see what we all witnessed. Of course, some people want to pretend that we didn't see this and something must be wrong with our vision and we're months or years behind on an eye appointment. We know what we saw. I know what I saw. I know what y'all saw. The world saw it. So you mean to tell me that everybody in the world who was protesting back in May saw something completely different? Let's see, they're trying to lean heavily on the quote unquote drug usage. That's what they're leaning on so badly because that's what they want it to come out to be. But that's not what it was. It wasn't. Let's say for all intents and purposes that George Floyd did have drugs in his system. That wasn't what killed him. They said right there in the autopsy report that it was death by asphyxiation, aka strangling, which is exactly what happened when this devil had his knee on his neck for almost 9 minutes. 8 minutes and 46 seconds to be exact.